Hey everybody, Mazer here. Welcome back to our top-down tutorial review for Pixel Game Maker MV. I know it's been a while and I apologize, but we are back, so let's get back on track. Today we're going to talk about two things. The first is going to be how to power down your ship when you get hit, and the second one is how to group up your objects so it's less of a mess and a little more organized visually. But we're going to work first on the power downs. So, as you know from our last video, when your ship hits this energy tank, it goes from a single shot to a double shot. And now what we want is to create an object for our ship to collide with that is going to bring back from 2 to 1 to basically your default shooting state. So what we're going to do is go to animations, and we're going to add a new animation, which is how we import new sprites to the game. And we're going to call this Spike. I have a object already set up right here that I made in Spyro. It's basically a little spiky ball that I made based off the Mega Man 2 sprites. First is we're going to center everything like we always do. Let's zoom out so everyone can see what we're doing. Now we need 2 collision boxes here. We can remove the wall detection because it's not going to be bumping into any wall basically. What we want is the attack detection and collision detection. Sorry about that. So let's add the keyframe for attack, and we'll hide it for now and focus strictly on the collision. What we want to do is, like every other hitbox, we want it to be as accurate to the sprite as possible. A nice tight hitbox really makes the game more enjoyable. There we go. Now after that, we'll hide this one by clicking on the eye, bring back the attack detection, and we're going to do the exact same thing. Perfect. And there we have it. We have our attack and collision all set up. Now the next thing we got to do is set up the rules for this, which is, of course, we go to Objects, Add Object, Spike Ball, click on Spike. This is going to be part of the enemy group. All right, so we're going to click on OK, and now we have our little spike, and we're going to scroll up here and give it a name, which is going to be called Default. Simple, nice, and clean. We're going to make a new action, and this is going to control the variables, so we're going to call this power down. And just to make things nice and easy, please make sure you keep the sprite the same, otherwise it will just vanish when it switches over. We're going to make a final action, and this is completely optional, but just for the sake of visuals, we're going to put this here. We're going to have a destroy option to show that the spikes interact with the ship. Okay, so we're going to connect the default to power down. So we're going to add the link, click power down, in other condition settings for the link, and we want to click on hit and attack detection. Set all, so it's every angle, and we're going to set by object player 1. And what this means is if player 1 hits the collision / attack detection box, it's going to power down. And how do we power that down? Well, it's very simple. We go to other runtime actions, go to option 2, change switch or the variable, and we're going to change the variable of player 1. The variable we're selecting is the weapon state equals to 0. And now what we're going to do is set up the power down to be destroyed after it plays through. So we're going to add a link right here, easy peasy, and we're going to do if motion animation plays to the end. So basically the moment this one kicks in, it's going to go through here and go to our destroy option, and we're just going to go to, let's see, option 1 right down at the bottom, destroy object. Now what this translates to is when player right here hits the attack collision detection, is going to lower the variable of the weapons to 0, and then it's going to go through, make sure the animation plays through, and destroy the little spike ball. Wonderful. With that all set up, we now have to set up the clone object, which again handles all of our shooting, to revert back to the default state. So what we're going to do is you have dual shot 1, dual shot 2. That's our little loop to hold down the button and continue firing. We're going to add a link back to the default. All right. You go to other condition settings and you want switch variable changes. And that means if the player 1 weapon state is equal to 0, go back to default. Now we want to make sure we put down change if all conditions are met. There we go. And then we're going to copy this right here, add it to this dual shot, and we're going to paste it back to default. So no matter which one of these loops it's on, if we get hit, it will change the variable back to 0 and set us back to the default state. And there we go. Now let's set up the scene. We go back to scenes and we're going to set up a spiky ball in the second quadrant. And we're going to shrink this down. We're going to hold shift so it shrinks down evenly all over. Now let's just add a couple of spiky balls. Control C, Control V. We'll just throw a few up here. Make like a little minefield. There we go. Now what we're also going to do is we want to make sure that if you get reverted back to the 0 state, that our energy tank will continue to bring us back to the dual shot. So let's just make sure that still works by throwing an energy tank here and here after we escape the minefield. All right, make sure you hit File and Save. And with all that said and done, let's test the game. All right, here's our single shot. Here's our dual shot. And now we're going to see what happens if we get hit. We got hit, the spiky ball disappeared, and we're back on the single shot. There you go. Now if we get our energy tank, and boom, back to double shot. When you use variables for these switches, it makes things a lot easier to manage because all you got to do is either add or subtract a few variables to control your weapons for these spaceships. And each variable can have a different result. So if we made a second variable, or I'm sorry, if we add the number 2 to the variable, and let's say we wanted a triple shot, we could. We just say when the variable is in state 2, go to triple shot. And then we just follow the steps that we did in the other tutorials. Now with that out of the way, let's go back to our objects. As you can see right now, everything's a little messy now with all of our arrows, and it's pretty hard to maintain an idea of where everything is going. Well, we can do something called grouping. Very simple. All you have to do is right-click anywhere on the background and add a group box. This is going to keep everything nice and organized. We're going to call this dual shot. And this is going to handle all the links for our dual shot. And let's make this a cool color. We're going to adjust the hue a little bit and make it, let's say, a nice red. There we go. Now, what you do is you click on this little plus symbol, and we're going to put both dual shots in that group. There you go. And when you want to hide them, you just click the down arrow, and they vanish. And the best thing about it is, if we go back to the game, even though the links are not visible, the programming code still works 100%. And we're going to do the same thing with the single shots. So we're going to add a group box, and we're going to make this a different shade of red. We're going to make this kind of like a... let's do a little bit of a purplish red. There we go. And we're going to call this single shot. And just like before, you hit plus, boom, boom, hit OK, all grouped together. And now you could just set these little windows aside and everything's good to go. I do recommend you keep everything where it was originally, because if you take your single shot, for example, Oh, as you see right here, it moved all over the place. There. Now let's remove them. And you see the links are there. And they're still connected to everything else. If we remove these, there you go. Now sometimes the links will vanish. I don't know why. It might be a bug. But as long as you put them close to their original positions, you should be perfectly fine. I do recommend you expand this to show the links before you hit the removal button. And there you have it. A nice, easy way to keep everything organized. Perfect. Wonderful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for the Power Down tutorial and the grouping tutorial. We're going to research a few more things. We're going to try working on enemy movement next. And once I refresh myself with that, we'll be back to showcase how to make an enemy sprite zigzag across the screen and then shoot at the player at random intervals. Thank you everybody for joining me today. I hope this was useful. I am Mazer and I'll see you next time. Bye.